Good afternoon to you. Happy Veterans Day, 3:06 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Sean Davis from The Federalist talks to us about who's going to be the next Republican leader in the Senate. Big secret vote taking place Wednesday. Why does it have to be a secret? John Hart is going to be with us from Open the Books, a part of the organization that has sussed out just how much you have been spending to protect Anthony Fauci in retirement. Millions upon millions of dollars. Did you approve of that? I don't think you did. And then Leif LeMahieu is with us from the Daily Wire coming up at 5:30, who broke that excellent story going into the weekend about those awful FEMA officials who were ordering their workers not to assist people with Trump flags, Trump signs in front of their homes in the wake of those awful hurricanes. An appalling story broken by the Daily Wire. Leaf will talk to us coming up at 5:30. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, I am eager to get Sean Davis's impression of this Senate race between John Cornyn, John Thune, and Rick Scott. Those are apparently the only three names in the Senate that are in the running to take over as the next Republican leader, as Mitch McConnell steps down from that role but rides out the balance of his time in the United States Senate. He's there through 2027. January 2027, he departs, meaning he's got really 2 more years in the seat there. But he's not a part of leadership anymore, he says, but he does appear to have a hand in picking his successor, and that's creating a lot of drama on Capitol Hill right now. So we'll get into those details coming up, but it really is amazing to hear. Well, you don't even hear them because they say it anonymously, but these statements that they're giving to all of the political news outlets, things like, well, this is supposed to be a secret process. Well, we're not going to be bullied. Well, Tucker Carlson can't tell us what to do. I don't even care what he says. Oh, really? What's your name? What's your name? I can't tell you. Why can't you tell me? I don't want anybody to know. Well, then why are you saying that it doesn't matter if you're begging for anonymity in order to say it? Please. They don't want to do it in public. They're angry that the voters have even noticed that there's a Senate majority leader vote going on this week. Stay out of it. This is our business, not yours. So that's the fun that we have to deal with this week. But let me start with some good news today in terms of people who are going into jobs that are well-suited for them, and more importantly for us, well-suited for the American people. Tom Homan is headed to be the border czar under President Trump. In other words, he's being given an appointment that doesn't require any Senate confirmation whatsoever. As we understand it, he'll be tasked with leading the deportation effort of illegal aliens who are here in the United States, getting our borders under control, and helping to restore normalcy to the sovereign country once known as the United States of America, will be once again known as the United States of America with a border. With a border. Tom Homan has been, relentless on this issue for years, an entire career in this work, in law enforcement, in policing the border, ultimately rising to the role of vice director under President Trump, and is now coming back as the border czar. Pretty good. Homan's got a lot of hits. Homan's got some amazing, amazing moments. For instance, here's Tom Homan schooling Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the issue of so-called family separation.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from his
Mr.
family.
Homan, with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay.
Okay, I can't figure out a way to attack you. It's not working. Let's move on. Let's move on to something else. Tom Homan with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and she almost destroys the gavel. If she had the strength to do it, she would shatter the gavel.
We're not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Homan,
Look,
please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
I've asked you politely to let me go beyond my time, and you let other
Gentlewoman
people go beyond their time, but not to Tom Homan. He don't get to go beyond his time.
Mr. Homan, we have
This is
approved
a
an
circus.
agreement
This is a circus.
between the Republicans and the Democrats with the ranking member. We increased the time of one witness, one member of Congress who was interrupted by a protest. That is done with the approval of the ranking member. Please respect the chair's authority.
I respect the chair's authority, but the chair...
Mr. Homan!
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. You work for me.
The witness will suspend.
Oh, man. Holy cow. She's as angry as the cartels are going to be when he starts deporting all of these illegals. So that's Tom Homan. He's got a lot of these moments. He created another one recently. He was asked by 60 Minutes. He's like, what are you going to do to stop family separation? He said, easy.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Yes, obviously. He's like talking to her like she's 5. I'm sorry. Let me help you understand this. We can deport them all together. Of course we don't want to separate them. Let's send them all on their merry way. Tom Homan. What's that? There's more?
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my
I
country.
find your comments disgusting as well, sir.
34 years.
I find your
This
comments
is out of
disgusting
control.
as well.
I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life were like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're the member of Congress.
We agree on that.
Fix it.
We agree on that, but I disagree. But I also disagree with your characterization of immigrants as prone to criminality.
American people for 3 decades on this.
Gentlemen, time is...
You better start packing now. You're damn right. Because you're going home. I got another message. Another message to the criminal cartels in Mexico. You smuggled enough fentanyl across this country to kill 148,000 young Americans. You have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's when President Trump gets back in office. He's going to designate you a terrorist organization, and he's going to wipe you off the face of the earth. You're done. You're done. Why would you release 5 or 6 female children to one male sponsor? Why would you do that? So God help these children. God help these children. I love kids. And this administration, I don't want to hear another word about you being humane. You're putting children at risk. Record number of Americans are dying. Record numbers of migrants are dying. There's one guy who can fix this, and it's Donald Trump. Look, I knew President Trump was going to run before you did because I had dinner with him in Las Vegas about 6 months before he announced. And we were having dinner, and he looked at me and says, Tom, I think I'm coming back. If I come back, can I get you to come back? I says, I tell you what, sir, I'm so pissed off, I'll come back for free.
Tom Homan. That guy needs WWE entrance music every time he walks out onto a stage. And of course, next time he's on our program, we need to have some good entrance music for him. Here's one of the downsides of a Trump administration, if any exist whatsoever. Here's one of them. I'll just let you in on a little secret. It gets a little more difficult to book these guys on the show because now they got to stick to the messaging, and so our guest list is in upheaval right now because so many of our great guests, of course, are now moving on to the next chapter of their lives and will be, working for you inside of a Trump administration, which I love. I just love. So many good picks. So there's Tom Homan. He was on with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday, and he was asked a couple of things about how this is all going to work inside of a Trump administration. And he said, first and foremost, when it comes to deportations, you got to focus on the public safety threats immediately. Obviously, you triage these things. You have to go right after the most dangerous people.
What are the plans for deportation? You heard what President Trump told me in that interview a couple of months ago. He says it's got to be done. How do you round up 10 million people and deport them?
Well, look, I agree with the president's plan on this, and the same plan he had during his first administration. You concentrate on the public safety threats and the national security threats first, because they're the worst of the worst. So it's going to be the worst first. That's how it has to be done. And we know a record number of people on the terrorist watch list have crossed this border. We know a record number of terrorists have been released in this country. We've already arrested some planning attacks. So look, the president is dead on when he says criminal threats, national security threats are going to be prioritized, and that's the way it's going to be.
Criminal threats, national security threats prioritized first makes perfect sense. Deportation, how much is it going to cost the American people? Tom Homan flips it on its head. He says, man, it's going to be a cost savings.
Cost of deportation, this President Trump's plan is going to be a cost savings to the American people, because this administration is paying for free airline tickets all over the country, free hotel rooms at $500 a night, a free education, free medical care, and that's in perpetuity. What President Trump's plan is going to do is, over time, is going to save the taxpayers money and put an end to this foolishness. They're paying $500 a night for a hotel room in New York City. Meanwhile, there's empty ice beds at $127 a night.
Yeah, what we're doing, we're spending money out of control right now to give goodies to foreign nationals, but that comes at the expense of American citizens. So, yes, it's going to cost money to deport, but it's going to save a lot of money in the long run, Tom Homan says. Right about that, too. He was also asked about what does this look like, mass deportation, and he wanted to address the claim that the United States military was going to do this work. Tom Homan says that that's wrong. You'll hear him in this clip refer to my news organization, The Daily Caller. Tom Homan was wrong about The Daily Caller here. He was actually referring to a Times of London article, as best I can gather. But take a listen. This is a great clip.
Practically speaking, who's going to do it? Are you envisioning military troops throughout the country rounding people up? Tell me how it's going to be done in a practical sense.
First of all, I want to make one thing clear. I read a piece this morning, I think Daily Caller, somebody said, Tom Homan says the military is going to go out rounding up and arresting illegal aliens. Never said that. Never said that in my entire life or in my career. So that was a ridiculous thing I just read in the paper.
That was Times of London.
Morning. It's going to be a well-targeted, planned operation conducted, led by the men of ICE. The men and women of ICE do this daily. They're good at it. They're all got Fourth Amendment training. They know they can and cannot do illegally. And it's a well-targeted. When we go out there, we're going to know who we're looking for. We most likely know where they're going to be, and this will be done in a humane manner. I keep reading these stories about concentration camps. ICE has the highest detention standards in the industry. And so these people will be well taken care of. It will be a humane operation, but it's a necessary mass deportation operation.
It's a humane operation and a necessary mass deportation operation. What about the sanctuary cities, though? What about the leftist locales that refuse to help ejecting the foreign nationals who are here illegally? Tom Homan addressed that this morning on Fox.
Well, I think, look, it'd be great to have local law enforcement assist ICE, because, one thing we learned during 9/11 report was we shouldn't have stovepipes. Law enforcement should be working with law enforcement. But, there's two things. Number one, under President Trump, he was suing the sanctuary cities, DOJ suing the sanctuary cities, pulling federal funds. Of course, day one, when Joe Biden came in office, he stopped that lawsuit. So that has to be put back in place. And look, I've seen some of these Democratic governors say they're going to stand in the way. They're going to make it hard for us. Well, a suggestion: if you're not going to help us, get the hell out of the way, but we're going to do it. So if we can't get assistance from New York City, and we may have to double the number of agents we send to New York City, because we're going to do the job. We're going to do the job without you or with you.
We're going to do the job without you or with you. Tom Homan, another great pick in a Trump administration that seems to be off to a great start. The names that he's announced already these are all patriots. These are people who are fighting for us, and that's great news. Corey tells me Lee Zeldin was just tapped as EPA administrator for President Trump. That's cool. Also, you perhaps heard the news, top of the hour, that Stephen Miller, who has long been very focused on getting our nation's borders under control, well before President Trump even came into office. This was his obsession. He worked for Jeff Sessions many years ago in the United States Senate, and this was always his obsession. I had lunch with Stephen Miller and one other guy in Sessions' office way back in the day before Trump was in office, and I was meeting with them. We were just talking, trying to stoke relations with Senator Sessions' office as we were doing news gathering at the Daily Caller. And so while we were at lunch, it was funny because we'd have conversations about like everything that was going on in the world. And Stephen's colleague, who I knew much better, we were just talking about random things, the Daily Caller, how things are going. But Stephen was singularly focused on immigration. No matter what we were talking about, he was like, okay, but look, we have to get the border under control. No matter what it was. Like, the weather's incredible today. Yeah, but look, we've got to get the border under control. So this is his attitude. And we've seen it on display while he was working in the Trump administration before, and now he will be doing it again. The announcement today, actually, it's not quite an announcement. It wasn't an interesting kind of funny rollout today because it was CNN that reported that it looks like he's headed to become the deputy chief of staff. And the confirmation came when J.D. Vance merely just tweeted congratulations to Stephen Miller for getting the role. So that's what we know today. We didn't see the Truth Social post or anything to that effect, but that is great news. Stephen Miller is exactly the kind of guy you want around. I had a friend today point out that he's not exactly the, Mr. Happy all the time. No, that's not what you want. This guy's a killer, and that's what you want. In that role, a deputy chief of staff, you want a killer there. Somebody who can keep the trains running, keep the mission focused, and get control of that border. So Tom Homan and Stephen Miller, and I would guess, this is just a guess, a very enthused Border Patrol and ICE, very enthused about the new leadership coming to town, letting them actually do their jobs for once. That's a huge deal. Coming up, Sean Davis from The Federalist talks to us about the battle to become the next Republican leader. There are 3 names currently competing for it. There's supposed to be a secret vote on Wednesday. And you know what secrets in Washington create? Shenanigans. Coming up, Sean Davis. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, John Hart, CEO of Open the Books, joins us. We'll discuss his group's finding of just how many millions of dollars you've been spending to give Anthony Fauci private security after he retired over 2 years ago now. A hint, it's in the millions. And then coming up at 5:30, Leif LeMahieu will be with us, reporter for the Daily Wire. We'll talk to him about those FEMA officials who refused to help Trump supporters in their moment of need. Remember, it was a conspiracy theory until it wasn't. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, there's a battle underway. Who's going to become the next Republican leader? Mitch McConnell is finally relinquishing the role, sort of. There are 3 people who are competing for the job right now: Senator Rick Scott, Senator John Cornyn, and Senator John Thune. Take a listen to some of this. Here's Rick Scott this morning on Fox and Friends.
With regard to the Trump nominees, we got to get them done. Whatever it takes. If it's recess appointments, whatever it takes, we got to get these done. We know Schumer's going to slow everything down. I am all on board. We've got to change the direction of this country. The country voted. They want a change. They want the Trump agenda. They want his nominees. They want his policies. We've got to do everything we can to get that done.
Rick Scott is the favorite among conservatives. Meanwhile, John Cornyn has things like this in his past.
Under the effective leadership of Director Wray, the agency has remained committed to doing things independently and by the book, which I think is perhaps the most important characteristic.
Is that the guy you want involved in passing legislation that involves whether or not the FBI gets new buildings or anything else? And also John Thune, here he is in the past.
Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. Would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options.
Well, in the end, Trump became president again. And now John Thune would like to be the Senate Majority Leader. Joining us now to discuss all of this, Sean Davis, CEO and co-founder of The Federalist. Sean, good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, what to make of this? They're having a secret vote on Wednesday, and it seems like quite a few senators seem to be annoyed, or at least they're expressing it anonymously, that voters are even paying attention to this process.
Yeah, it's hilarious watching a bunch of cloistered senators take umbrage at the people actually wanting to have a say in the direction of their country. And they had quite a say last week. They want a new direction. And it was a victory handed to Trump and his agenda, the likes of which Republicans have not seen in 40, almost 50 years. You have to go back to Reagan. And I think, we look at 1984 as kind of the high water mark of landslides. He won 49 states. Obviously Trump didn't win 49, but I almost think his performance was on par with that, just given how divided this country today, how bitter those divisions are. The fact that he was able to go in, sweep every single battleground state, win the popular vote is shocking, and it shows just how much the people want the agenda that he campaigned on implemented. And if senators aren't willing to do that, they need to get out of the way.
So how high are the stakes here between these three men, John Cornyn, John Thune, Rick Scott? How do you see it?
I see John Cornyn and John Thune, the two Johns, as functionally the same. They're just younger versions of Mitch McConnell. So if you really liked the way that Mitch McConnell ran things, which is using the Senate for his own benefit, using money to bully people to back his agenda, I think you'll love either John Thune or John Cornyn. They're both just clones of Mitch McConnell, but younger versions. Scott, I think, would obviously be an improvement. Obviously, no one is perfect in that body, but I think what it's gonna come down to is senators having to decide: do we want to keep doing the same things we've been doing for 10 years or 20 years, which have clearly been rejected by the people, or do we want to do something a little different that's a little more responsive to individual senators and to the American people? That's the question before them.
Yeah, because I've seen some criticism leveled against Rick Scott. You mentioned nobody's perfect, and Dana Lash is online today pointing out that his past record, at least as time as governor of Florida and a little bit beyond, wasn't always conservative. There were times where he kind of limped in the direction on some of these of the Second Amendment issues in the direction of the left. But his score of late has been very high. His conservative scores, all the record keeping on U.S. senators and how they vote. Rick Scott has a 92% Heritage Action scorecard rating. John Thune's at 37%. John Cornyn is at 35%. And at the bottom of all of this, Sean, I will say that the instincts for conservatives are, if you are closely aligned with the Washington establishment, if that is what everybody thinks of when they see you, in a lot of ways, you're kind of the wrong person to carry out the mandate that the voters just presented us with, right?
Right. Well, and it's interesting. You go back 10 years. You go back to 2014. We had Mitch McConnell, the current Senate Majority Leader who's leaving, bragging to everyone who listened about how thoroughly he crushed the Tea Party movement. He hated the Tea Party because the Tea Party represented a restriction on his power. They wanted obedience to the Constitution, and they wanted sane spending. And he crushed them, and he was thrilled about it. Fast forward 10 years, and we have two guys, the two Johns running, who have been openly hostile to Trump. John Cornyn himself personally likened me to a Nazi sympathizer because I opposed Ukraine spending. And then you had John Thune, who went wobbly in 2016 after the Access Hollywood hit on Trump, and then was still going after him, demanding a different nominee as recently as a year or two ago. Now, to me, those are not two people who represent the will of the public or of the Republican Party. They're completely out of step with it.
By the way, John Cornyn has never tried to apologize to you for that, has he?
No, of course not.
I didn't think so. I just want to make sure. I mean, because I do view that as disqualifying. If he's out there calling great conservatives like Sean Davis Nazi sympathizers, you shouldn't be the Republican Majority Leader, because for obvious reasons. Like that's insanity, and we don't want more of that. Also, if you're looking to, I mean, as you've pointed out a bunch of times here, Sean, if you're looking to move on from Mitch McConnell, you don't do it by picking his lieutenants.
Correct. Yeah. And the thing about the two of them is, Mitch McConnell, he's living on borrowed time at this point politically. and he wants to pass the torch. He wants guys who are going to preserve his power, which is why, by the way, he set this leadership election right after the election. He was actually assuming that Trump was going to lose, and he was going to be able to use that to push one of these guys through, and the opposite of what he wanted happened. And so he was hoping for a snap election where he could bully everyone. This is the last thing he wants right now. The last thing he wants is an open process, which is why we have a secret vote, which I think is insane. You were only there because of the votes of the people who elected you. Have a spine,
yes.
Have some fortitude, and show us how you're voting. The fact that they want to keep it secret, I think, is unconscionable.
In fact, I saw so Tucker Carlson over the weekend tweeted the following. He wrote, "What the hell is going on in the U.S. Senate? Hours after Donald Trump wins the most conclusive mandate in 40 years, Mitch McConnell engineers a coup against his agenda by calling early leadership elections in the Senate. Two of the three candidates hate Trump and what he ran on. One of them, John Cornyn, is an angry liberal whose politics are indistinguishable from Liz Cheney's. The election is Wednesday. It's by secret ballot. It will determine whether or not the new administration succeeds. Rick Scott of Florida is the only candidate who agrees with Donald Trump. Call your senator and demand a public endorsement of Rick Scott. Don't let McConnell get away with it again." And now I see this morning Sean Davis on something called Punchbowl News, a political outlet in D.C. An anonymous GOP senator is quoted here saying, quote, "I really don't much care what Tucker Carlson thinks. They're trying to bully us. That's not how these elections work," said the Republican senator who was granted anonymity to give a candid assessment. Well, if he doesn't care what Tucker thinks, then why is he bothering giving an anonymous statement?
Oh, he absolutely cares what Tucker thinks, because the thing that he actually detests is people thinking that they have a say in how senators should vote. And that senator, whoever it is actually correct. Traditionally, these leadership races have effectively been a gigantic middle finger to everyone on the outside, everyone who pays these people's bills, who think they should have a say in who represents and who leads the Republican Party in Washington. And so they detest, they hate, they loathe anyone who thinks that they should be able to tell their senators to vote on their behalf. And so I actually love that this senator went out and said that. He would have been smarter to just keep his mouth shut. But instead, he went out under the cloak of anonymity to trash his own voters.
Yes.
That right there is a perfect example of everything that is wrong with the United States Senate.
That exactly right. I saw that and I thought to myself, he's going to make it worse. Whoever this is going to make it worse for all of these senators who are hoping to pull off a quick vote out of sight of the American people. Instead, they're just going to tick them off even more. Now, the question gets to, should President Trump get involved in all of this? Now, normally, the way the Senate handles this, they say, stay out of it. It's not your branch. Please stay away. It's just for us. We can do this all on our own. And President Trump has not weighed in yet on an endorsement. I'm seeing today that Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary, has indicated that he believes that Trump would endorse Rick Scott for that role if those people who support Rick Scott could present President Trump with the evidence that would make the difference, that a Trump endorsement would guarantee Scott becomes the victor. What do you think should happen here, Sean Davis?
Yeah, that's really, really hard. These things are so fluid, and it's so hard to get actual valid intel out of there, again, because of the secret vote. You're going to have lots of people saying things publicly that they're simply not going to do privately. I think what Trump cares about at the end of the day is making sure his agenda gets implemented. And I think he wants these people to understand, and what's happening now is key to helping them understand, that if they don't do what he said he was going to do if elected, if they don't help him implement the agenda that a majority of the American people have demanded, he is going to crush them. He's going to make their lives miserable, and he's going to end their careers. So whether it's best for him to do that now on the front end or do it on the back end once someone is elected, I really don't know. I actually think that's a tough call. But I think the most important thing is to make these senators understand,
yes,
you're going to do what the American people elected us to do, or you're going to pay the price.
Yeah, but the thing I keep thinking, and I'm with you, I don't know what the proper course of action for the president is here. Obviously, he wants as much unity as he can possibly get out of a Republican-led government going into the new year. But I want these fights to happen now. I don't want to be in a situation where we pass some horrific piece of legislation that screws over the American people, and then we have to endure a news cycle of President Trump reading them the well-deserved riot act. I'd rather get way ahead of that and just put the right people in place now.
I think that's exactly right. And he needs his people in office, doing the work he was elected to do almost on day one. And I actually think the big stick that he has to use against these senators, the only thing people in Washington, professional Washington and K Street want right now is they want a tax bill full of a bunch of goodies. And they need to understand they ain't getting none of it until they play ball with Trump. So if they're going to give him the middle finger and put in John Thune, Mitch McConnell's lieutenant, fine. But there's going to be a price to pay because they're not going to get their corporate bag of tax goodies.
Is some of this, the fact that there's even a debate right now among Republicans in the Senate, is a lot of that just tied up with campaign funds, that they believe that Thune and Cornyn are the most likely to both have access to the money and make the decisions about where to put it? Is that why senators are lining up with them?
Yes, well, there's the gigantic pot of money through the Senate Leadership Fund, which McConnell and his lieutenants have raised, which they use to bully anyone. You'll notice that McConnell didn't, that fund, that PAC, didn't spend a dime in Florida to help Rick Scott. Thankfully, he didn't need it. He won by 13. Didn't spend a dime on Ted Cruz, who was in a close race there, but had no problem spending millions on Larry Hogan in Maryland, who had no chance. So it's this kind of corporate alliance that they have where they go out and they raise money, and it enables them to bully senators into doing what they want. That needs to end.
Yeah, Hung Cao came a lot closer in Virginia than Larry Hogan did in Maryland. And where did all the funding go? I mean, why would it go to that race? So lastly, on the Senate fight here, you've got all these guys competing, and one of the things that President Trump wants is the ability to make what are known as recess appointments. In other words, like when the Senate actually goes into recess, that he can get people into place that he needs immediately to keep serving the American people. I'm not even sure why this is much of a debate, Sean Davis. Why would a Republican Senate get in the way of President Trump from doing recess appointments?
Well, the dirty little secret is a bunch of these senators don't actually support Trump's agenda, and they don't support his policies. And so what they would love to see is the gears gummed up in the confirmation process, so it grinds everything down to a halt. It takes him forever to get his people in, much like what happened in 2017. And then so they hide behind, oh, well, sorry, it's the process. Well, that's a lie. If the Senate can't process these confirmations, either through Democrat shenanigans or their own nonsense, they just need to go into recess, let Trump do recess appointments, which are perfectly constitutional when done during an actual recess, and allow him to implement his agenda. But what you're seeing is a lot of people hiding behind a process argument on appointments and recess appointments because they quite honestly just don't have the stones to make the substantive argument that what they actually want is to obstruct Trump's agenda.
Those people need to leave Washington. But in the meantime, we need people in the right position in leadership. Thank you, Sean Davis. Really appreciate your time and wisdom as always, sir. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Robert calling in from South Carolina, line 1. Hello, Robert. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call today.
Yes, sir.
Hey, glad to see Chuck Schumer's in election tonight, by the way. Anyhow, I just wanted to kind of get your spin, what your thoughts are. You know, with the House, we're sitting at 214, and I think everybody knows if we don't win the House, it's impeachment 2.0. Two of the races out there are, what's his name, Newhouse out in Washington and Vallado out in California, both who voted to impeach Trump. And then, of course, with, what's her name up in New York there, Stefanik, potentially leaving Congress.
Yeah.
Even if we get to 218, I think we need greater numbers than that because, well, we've got two Democrats supporting Republicans, and anyhow, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you. We need bigger margins.
We
need bigger margins on this. But just to give you a sense of where things are, you're right. Some election callers have this race right now at 214, 203. You need, as you pointed out, 218 for control of the United States House. Decision Desk HQ, which was one of the early places to call so many of the events of election night this past week, they right now are saying that Republicans have an 80.5% chance of control. That's the position you'd want to be in. But that is a declination from last week where they said right after the election they believed there was a 90% chance for Republican control of the House. So that's worrisome to see it move in that direction at all. You also correctly point out that most of these races, it looks like, are in California, Washington, Oregon, where we're waiting for a lot of this to come in. There's an at-large race going on in Alaska right now, but that does look like it's going to head to the Republican in some form. It's a little more complicated. If he doesn't cross 50%, then it moves to a ranked choice voting thing. But Republicans confident they're going to pick up that at-large seat in Alaska. Good guy Nick Begich out there. Also, Elise Stefanik is in a very safe Republican seat. And we've just found out that she's destined to become the next ambassador to the UN. If that happens, well, they're going to have a special election there to replace her. It'll be state Republicans in New York who pick who goes on the ballot. That should resolve over the course of the next 10 to 12 weeks. But this is razor thin. This is not where you want to be. You want a big margin in the House. That's not where we are right now, which is why Republicans have to perform well these next 2 years so they can grow those margins. That's critical. Thank you, Robert. Stay with us. Ahead, John Hart will join us from Open the Books. You've been spending millions to give Anthony Fauci private security in retirement. The details ahead.